Okay, I'll send you Okay.
Susan's in the pool. All right.
Okay. Did somebody sign? Oh. Somebody sign in with the resident council?
Oh, Susan did. Yeah.
Sign in? You know, the
Yeah, I
thing-
always have to rename myself.
Okay, well, I think when you signed in, I got a message saying I had been signed out.
That can happen.
But apparently it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter as far as I can tell. It usually doesn't affect the meeting, fortunately.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, Marilyn, as it turned out, you didn't need to go that far to find sun.
That's what I hear.
We got plenty of it.
Oh, no, I assume you went down there to get away from the sun. Okay, there's Cindy.
We can see that Susan is staying cool in the pool.
Yeah.
I just came from the pool, actually.
And mail.
So it's 100 degrees here. How hot is it in Portland?
Oh, it's a balmy 94.
Oh, okay. But I get nighttime breezes so that it goes down to around 60 at night.
It's been very windy here, which really helps with the temp. And tomorrow it's down to the 70s, I think. Yeah. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday down into the 60s,
Wow.
back into the 70s. So a cooling trend.
When are you coming back, Marilyn?
When am I coming back? Well, I'm leaving here the 5th of July. So ostensibly I'll be home the 8th, but I'm not decided yet.
Oh,
To take the scenic route.
Yeah, I want to build Crater Lake into my journey home.
Totally worth it.
And 138, the highway of waterfalls.
Hmm.
Been 6 years waiting to do some of these things and decided as long as I've got to be in the vehicle, I might as well make it worthwhile. So do you think this is it for our attendance? Andrea's on the road. This is a pretty good number. Shall we dive in?
yeah, Beth says she's not going to be here.
Okay. I'm going to slightly rearrange the agenda. We'll get to the things that we can. Action items from the 13th. Let's talk data. Steve, you want to talk? Let's talk, Steve.
Let's talk. Yeah, so I'm waiting to hear back from Tina specifically about the question of sensitivity to phase 3. I did meet with her on Friday and we went through the question and the surprising response. Well, I went through specifically the marketing and sales concern about miscommunication, and her reaction was not at all concerned. It was, oh yes, we've done surveys before, not surprised, that's what we see here and that's what we see in all CCRCs, which frankly kind of blew my mind. But that kind of got us off on a different track, and we ironically never got back to the big question, which was really, is there any heartburn over over releasing this next month, given the phase 3 timing? So but I followed up with an email on that question. Hopefully we'll get an answer to that, and that's it so far.
Okay. The next issue I'm going to determine is the bylaws changes. Jerry, do you want to speak to that?
I could speak to that for a long time, but I'll try to keep it short. So, what happened was that we had a chairperson who, along with her consultant attorney, disagreed with the remainder of the committee, who split off and did their own work. Unfortunately, without telling me that they were going to do that, and they continued to do their own work without the chair, even after I disbanded them. And I disbanded them because they couldn't get together and compromise to any degree at all. So I disbanded them again. And the current thought is that the two different versions we have will come to a subcommittee, this committee, who will look them over and try to come up with something that's best, that represents a combination of both. In terms of content, the total items are very similar. The order is a little bit different. One is a little bit shorter than the other. One quotes the statutes from the Oregon regs, and the other does not. I was sold, by the way, on keeping the regs in. I view this document as something like a reference document. I don't think people are going to be using it every day, but there's items in the Oregon regs which have a lot to do with finances and being transparent. And I think that it would be good if they were in there. Also, there's concern in both about having a finance committee that is a committee appointed by the council. And I thought that was a good idea as well, as opposed to what has failed currently this year, which is a committee picked by Vassar. And that was just a disaster. So there are lots of good things. They're not that dissimilar, but we need to come to a final document without people biting each other's heads off. And then decide what happens from there. And I was looking on your group for recommendations for publishing. How do we get it out to the community? Because even though the council gets to look at it first and can add comments, it's really going to go to the population of Roseville residents, who will decide if they want to accept it or not.
Actually, that's the real question that pertains to this committee, because we had a subcommittee to work with the bylaws committee. The bylaws committee is disbanded. That subcommittee is reformed, I guess, to combine. Anyway, once the final product is complete, where does that leave the communications committee at large and the specific subcommittee, or is it too soon to tell?
Well, I can tell you what I've had in mind, which is that once that product is produced, it will go to the council. The council will say yay or nay, or gee, we ought to do this a little bit differently. But I'm hoping that the product is very polished and easy to understand, mostly, so that we can then get it out to the community. Now, I would like to get it out to the community with the advice of this committee. What do you think is the best way to do that? And then this committee still remains in a consultant role at that point.
Okay, so this might be an all hands on deck for the communications committee. Okay, do you have any idea what the time frame for that will? Are we looking at a month from now? Are you
Well,
on a November election?
well, it's gotta be done by the annual or a semi-annual meeting. So the annual meeting is going to be in November.
Okay,
And so we have a number of steps to go through and before that happens.
okay, so you will no doubt keep us posted.
I think that there should be a sort of a multi-part rollout of this thing when there's a final product. It seems to me that communicating to the resident body what this is all about is going to be a fairly, maybe not complicated, but it's not going to be an easy thing. There are going to be some significant changes. And so I'm wondering if we want to, maybe have some kind of a public forum meeting or something, and some sort of RV chat document or something. In other words, a multi-pronged approach.
It's not only significant changes, it's significant changes to something that I think isn't well understood as it is already.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess my suggestion originally to the bylaws committee was a series of educational things,
Yeah.
events might be
Yeah.
good. First one explaining why do we even need to change the bylaws? What's the big deal, right? And then go from there. But yeah, I think it'll be a process.
And don't forget, we're going to have 40 some new residents who've never seen any version of it.
Yep.
And so we're going to have a lot of explaining to do. And the statutes probably have never been seen by most people, either new residents or current residents. And I think people need to take time to consider them and ask questions about them and compare the statutes with what we do here and see if they think we ought to change some of that, which is what the bylaws changes are suggesting in any case.
So Jerry, because the initial plan was to have the bylaws committee work with our subcommittee, am I correct in assuming the original bylaws committee will have nothing to do with the product going forward? And
That's
that
correct,
it's on our plate.
right?
Is that correct?
Well, it's on your plate plus Cindy and I as separate officers of the council. So we're responsible for it in the long run.
Okay,
May I just ask one question of Jerry while I'm thinking about it? You know, the one piece that wasn't finished because everything fell apart, we're writing the operational procedures.
Right.
So that's, I mean, I have no idea how onerous that is or what kind of time that will take and who will do it.
I think Cindy had some ideas. She was going to try to rope in people who have experience with that.
Oh, good.
Even though they were on the bylaws committee, which is now disbanded. So she's going to have a little persuading to do.
Oh, so you may actually, that's what I was kind of hoping that, you know, some people on that committee could be very helpful with the
Right.
operating procedures.
There's some helpful people and some other people. So I'll try to work with the helpful people.
okay.
but- yeah.
Any other questions about the bylaws for the moment?
Now, Steve had suggested getting together on July 5th.
Mhm.
And I said that I had a lunchtime meeting downtown, but I could meet in the afternoon. And who else?
I sent an email saying
That's
I had
right.
a doctor appointment and suggested 3 o'clock if that would work for the rest of our folks. John
Works.
Steele's not here, but
Yeah, I unfortunately have a startup mentoring meeting at 3 o'clock on Tuesday. I'm open at 2 or I'm open at 4.
Can you
Or-
guys work that out in a separate meeting since there are those of you who
Yep.
aren't here? Okay, great. Any
okay.
other general questions about,
Am I going to that meeting? I mean, I'd like to.
What did you ask?
Am I invited to that meeting?
Sure.
Okay. Well, I can do any of those times.
okay. Finished with bylaws? All right, I would like to just report on progress with social dining events. Noreen and Marty there were 5 of us from this committee that talked about social dining events to aid in the integration of phase 3 residents. We talked with Noreen, she talked with Marty. What we were suggesting is we would have monthly community dining events where everybody would arrive at the same time, choose from a limited menu, and residents would be tasked with the seating arrangements. So that's what we asked Noreen and Marty if that was doable, what their thoughts were. They got back to us and said it's quite doable. We want to talk more about it. So progress on that front. And the meeting with them is on the 18th of July. So hopefully we thought we would try and do a couple of them before the big rush comes in September just to see how it goes.
So you would have a certain number of new residents and a certain number of existing residents pre-arranged by invitation, or?
No, it would be completely voluntary. People who would be signing up for random distribution.
How are you going to limit the number who come in?
Well, people will have to make reservations.
Okay.
Steve, do you have anything to add to that? Judy missed the meeting. Andrea's on the road. Who am I missing?
I think that was just the idea is, yeah, we have to have reservations just to get the head count. So we know what that is and know what the limit is. And yeah, aside from that, random assignment.
And dining at Harvest Grill for lunch and dinner resumed today, I believe.
Okay,
Yes, that's right.
so any other comments about that? Okay. I wanted to double back on the request that Susan made last time on behalf of the Welcoming Committee for integration of new residents. So she talked about 4 things, some of which we nodded to, and I just wanted to see where we are with these. Neighborhood videos will be up to the neighborhoods to contact Steve. Is that correct, Susan?
Our welcome circles have been invited to make RV Today episodes as part of their open house, actually. And I believe that the North Pocket neighborhood is in the process of making one, and that Central is interested. None of the other neighborhoods are interested.
Okay, so that's quite manageable. It'll happen as neighborhoods approach Steve. I mean, not neighborhoods, the welcoming circles.
Maybe when they see our video, they'll want one.
Well, maybe we should figure out a way to publicize it. Do you have any idea how long they'll be, Steve?
This first one will be an interesting experiment. So honestly, we'll know more when we're done. But the idea is actually literally to film it on Friday of this week. So
Oh,
And then Cindy gets to do the magic of editing. So we'll know more soon.
Okay, well, if it's short enough, maybe we can show it at a forum or a council meeting.
I think the goal is to make it, like a few minutes type thing, not a
Mhm.
real long thing.
What type of content?
What we're going to try is just sort of to schedule it with everybody to be out front, everybody who's around, and literally to do a pretty quick walking tour through the place, and so people just get a quick view of what it is and who's there. With a start out, probably the idea was to start out maybe with the map saying here's North Pocket. Little bit of background, it's part of phase 2. People started moving in mid 2019, just really brief, and then just a quick walkthrough so you get a view, a sense of who lives here. So really lightweight and frankly easy to put together and easy to edit is the goal, but still gives people a view of the neighborhood and who's in it.
Sounds good.
The
That
great-
particular RV Today episode will be aired at an introduction to the open house for that neighborhood. So presumably phase 3 people who have less experience with our campus and our neighborhoods would have come to the intros, get a brief overview of where they're going to visit, and then off they would go to see who's who.
Okay, Susan, you asked for lists of resources. If CommComm would put together a list of resources, could you be a little more specific?
A list has been compiled. As the communications team, it's really identifying the communication resources that come from Rosevilla and from residents as a means of helping new people know how to get information on our campus. That it's we've had various versions and we're getting close to a final, but that is an overview piece. And because this is an overview team, I had thought that would be something to respond. Because no one jumped at our last meeting and said, oh, I want to work on that. We just went ahead as a welcoming committee and put more energy into that.
So is there anything you need, anything specific that you need from CommComm?
Since you didn't step forward to take it on, no, we are finishing it.
Okay, great.
And Mayo had her hand up.
I didn't mention it last time, but the safety committee is going to be putting on touchdown emergency icon, and it's going to have all sorts of phone numbers and how to get to the right person to get things done. So you'll have that resource because we're working with Beth to get it on
That's great.
slowly.
Okay, the third thing was one-on-one support. Can you be more specific about what that would entail for this committee?
That would involve CommComm members meeting individually or in small groups with residents who wanted to learn about the overview of communication resources. If you're given a long list, it's nice to have a coach who would say, your first month, I would concentrate on these 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that will really immerse you in, the basics, and you'll be well covered. And then come back and maybe talk about a second tier of things that are potentially of interest. So that the person isn't just given a long list of something and not know where to jump in. The welcoming committee is coordinating with Steve on his activities email and with Cindy and me eventually on RV chat. And our goal is to put new residents on both of those in their first week or after their first week on campus. And that would involve an opt-out option if they choose not to, but we just need to get them on. But the coaching, the one-on-one support would be to sit with people and say, I'm not strong on computers. What are the tools on here that I could make use of to keep up with what's going on? You could say, well, okay, here's a paper copy of the trumpet and a paper copy of this, and et cetera. And you can call this line to see if the mail is in. So
What specifically do you want from us? Do you want a list of names of people in this committee? Or do you want to contact this committee as needed? What,
I would like to know who is willing to be a one-on-one coach so that we can offer the option for people who want to sit down one-on-one and go over this information.
okay, there you go. Who wants to be a one-on-one coach? Mayo?
No, I'm questioning if this isn't drop-in.
This is not the drop-in support group. This would be a customized session for an individual or a small group that wanted to go over communication.
Well, the rate we're going, we're not going to get to touchdown, so I'm not ready to help, but
Can we?
that'll
could we see
resolve.
the-
Well, I can help people with RV chat and the website, that kind of stuff. Touchtown. I already have a couple, well, Arlen and I do, that we're, the contacts for, so I'll totally work with them. But if you have other people,
I'm not clear on what this list is.
It lists the resources like Touchtown, Our Villagers, the activities line, all of the communication channels on campuses. This is a communications committee.
I see what you're saying.
And it would take a brand new person who doesn't know about any of these and help them navigate. What are the good options that I should get up to speed on? Which ones can I have routed through my email? Which are paper? What about emergency stuff? How do I find out when someone dies? I mean, the whole array.
oh gosh, I don't know some of that.
This is referring to the second tool that listing the resources. So a person would sit down with this tool and go over with someone what they would need to cover. I didn't get much response from you guys last time. What you seemed to be very enthusiastic about was the fourth option, which is the drop-in Q&As. Which are going to be
Before we get to that, I just want to tidy this up so it doesn't appear on the agenda anymore. Can we just leave it to you to reach out to us when you have a need for one-on-one rather than signing people up for who knows what?
doesn't sound like I'm gonna get
I-
response. So I'm
I'm
good to
willing
have
to,
it.
I'm willing to help Susan as long as, I mean, up to a limit, right? As long as I'm not maxed out.
Yeah.
No,
Because
so am
I'm
I.
having no
Any
idea how
different.
many people there are a week, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little tough to gauge not knowing what the demand is, but if it's just occasionally, I'm fine with that.
And it
And
might be that we could have a small group or something when the time comes. Jerry, I interrupted you.
I was just going to volunteer as well.
Okay,
I
we'll
think that
see what need
be-
emerges.
be aware, Susan, that if we're doing one-on-one and then later the people we've talked to compare notes, they may not have all the same answers. Because I think we all have different ways of approaching different issues.
If we each gave a tour of campus, same result.
Okay,
I mean, the whole
No,
mantra with
that's-
our Welcome Circles program is framework and flexibility. So every welcome circle is different, but the welcome circle exists in the framework. So Yeah.
okay.
thank you.
Okay.
Reach out.
Moving on to the weekly Q&A. My recollection is we thought it was a really good idea to continue for a long time. And we talked about approaching the council or Rosevilla for a grant for coffee to make it a social affair.
Ooh,
What do you all think?
so there's not currently coffee being provided yet on Thursday mornings?
This is a different group.
I know, I'm just
Oh,
asking.
no, Thursday doesn't have coffee yet. It has not been revived.
Okay, so how much money are we talking about?
This is Maryland's request for coffee. This is not something our welcoming committee asked for.
No, I understand. I'm asking Marilyn.
I think previously it was $25 a pop or a pot.
Set up and break down both, so
Yeah.
it ends up being $100. I don't know.
However, once Schroeder is open, I'm sure, I mean, there's a kitchen right there. We could make our own
Yeah.
coffee. Um,
Right, we're gonna be in the South Main Art Room until the Schroeder Lofts Rec Room becomes available. They have not given us a projected date.
You
And
know,
obviously,
I don't know if this is open or not, but I got a brief tour of fourth floor or third floor in the Madrona Grove building. And there is a wonderful room up there with lots of windows and a big table, square table, and there is an adjacent kitchen. So it meets all the requirements if they'll let us use it.
I don't know the options for residents using that space. Does anybody?
could you inquire, Susan?
That would make,
Maybe I should inquire.
Okay,
it makes so much sense since we're focusing on phase 3 residents to allow
And
that.
it seems a shame to have it just sit there.
yep.
I don't know if we are screened, if it's in a locked area.
Well, Jerry will,
Also, the new little cafe thing in Madrona Grove, once that's open.
Yeah, that's not going to be open until August, we asked.
it's very small. You can't have any kind of group meeting in there.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
maybe they can make the coffee.
The room I'm talking about, it takes a fob to get in to the door, but once you're in the door, you can go up the elevator.
Okay, so Jerry will find out about that. for
Yeah,
next
I'll
time.
ask Tina.
And Susan, if you can get us a calendar of when you plan to start these things.
Thursday, July 21st at 4 o'clock.
Okay,
Whoa. Thursday, July 24th,
21st,
21st at 4.
correct. The first week, we have 4 households moving, I believe, moving into Trillium. I don't know if they will be of a mood to pop into a drop-in so quickly, but we thought we'd meet and then we'd have some conversation and pick up people each week as the move-ins continue. There will be a little bit of a gap between the Trillium move-ins and the Schroeder move-ins.
okay, so between now and then, you'll keep us informed and tell us.
The way we were going to set up this drop-in Q&A is that Jan and I will attend each one. We'll have a bin of resource materials from whoever wants to offer something. And we will have 2 scheduled volunteers who agree to be there on a particular week. And then other current residents are invited to attend. We won't have an agenda initially. It'll be open-ended questions, but it's possible that if themes emerge or areas of interest or questions or issues, then we would have an announced session that covers more information on whatever, healthcare, dining, how to meet people, whatever.
So it sounds like we're on call as needed. And if we can find a kitchen, coffee decision is in the future.
Right.
Okay.
You know, and I'm sure council will pay for it. But I'm also thinking because of the location and all the administration leaders have their offices up there, they might be willing to be a guest and meet new people as part of it. You know, make it a combined administration resident function.
Okay, that's a good idea to pitch to them, Jerry.
I will be doing that.
Hope it works.
Well, we primarily would like this to be an opportunity for new people to ask questions.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want an agenda or a program to take over the majority of the meetings. I want them to be able to pop in and say, I can't figure out where recycling goes.
Not to worry, Susan, I got it. So
Okay.
when I had the idea about having an administration person there would be simply to help answer questions. You know, to have them be part of the function that we're providing for new residents. Because I think that doing is a combination would be viewed as more friendly and that we're acting in collaboration.
Mhm.
Well, it might make it more likely for them to let us use their brand new spiffy, beautiful conference
Well,
room.
you betcha.
Go, Jerry, go.
And the new people could see what they paid for.
Yeah.
I
Old
wasn't
people can-
gonna go there. Well, I just want you to know that the view is hampered by air conditioning units and piping everywhere. So not to worry, it's not a fantastic view.
Everybody in Schroeder has the fantastic view.
Well, on the fourth floor, they can see Mount Hood.
Wow.
Can they see Alaska?
Uh,
They can see Russia.
Depends which way they look.
At our last meeting, another suggestion came up that I didn't see on this agenda, and that was having an activities fair. That's probably under the next section of general integration. And the notion was to have campus groups and organizations come and have a table, and then people can wander around and see if they want to.
When we talked about that last time, you said welcoming committee could do it, neighborhoods could do it, RV could do it. So I didn't get, so what's the latest?
Oh, I got the feeling that you guys have embraced that idea, that it sounds really good and you want to do it. Welcoming committee is 2 people, guys, and we're going to be really saturated by September,
Okay.
October.
Well, you know, the other thing that occurs to me is that you're starting to pile on events. And the residents might just feel like it's overkill unless we give them a break and then come back to some of these after a month or 2.
And people are moving in over a period of time as well.
Right.
So is anybody else talking about an activities fair?
Bill Rector asked me about it several months ago. Is this going to happen? Maybe he was thinking of resident council taking it on. I don't know. But I think there is campus-wide interest in having something like that. We probably just, maybe resident council just needs to appoint a team to start. Would that make sense?
You know, Bill hasn't talked to us at all. So I'd like to know what he's thinking before I commit to that.
Maybe he should volunteer to lead a group to do it.
Yeah.
Just an idea.
Well, this is the kind of annual event that I think would be very useful.
And you have a lot of talented people on the council. What about throwing it open to the council to see who there would like to step up to the plate besides Bill Rector?
That's kind of weird to put it that way.
Well, I say that only because in the past, Bill's ability to identify groups has been spotty at best.
No, I hear what you're saying, but can you give me something in writing that's a little more definitive about what you want, Susan? And
I think Marilyn is more the author of the activities fair. To me, it's
okay,
just always been a 2-hour event where organizations provide information about their activities. So people can sign up if interested.
if nothing else, if Marilyn, you could just send me an email that just kind of outlines it. And then I can put it on the agenda of a council meeting. We can talk about it.
Okay, before we go that route, is this something that residents want to own? Because I've heard Tina talk about it as well. Do we want, how should this happen? Should it be resident driven, collaborative?
I would be amazed if Tina would want to take this on before phase 3 is done. I mean, that's the excuse for not being able to do anything. So I would be really surprised until like pushing winter.
I think all of the counselors represent different groups and areas. That's your list right there. And I would think it'd be resident driven. I can't think of a staff driven thing that people would join.
But if, once again, we took it as a collaborative event and just opened it to staff as they were interested.
Well, like Renee, for example, come and go over all the fitness classes.
Renee should come. They should talk about the food think tank. There's a number of things. I could see it as in the pack, you know, a bunch of tables. Each group that wants to has a table and some information, and people can come in and talk to the person there at whatever tables they want. Find out what they could join.
I would love to see it outside, make it a real fair. Anyway, would anybody like to sit down or Zoom with me to talk about this proposal that I'm going to send to Jerry?
Sure.
Okay. Cindy and Steve, great. Thanks for reminding us about that, Susan. I had dropped it. So there are two mega topics bearing down on us. One is the survival of the website and potential for RV news combining. And the second is mutual misperceptions, the increasing gap and tension between residents and staff. So what would y'all like to talk about?
Why is the survival of the website even an issue?
Because its usage does not warrant the work that has gone into it.
Well, the work is a sunken expense. Just refreshing stuff, you know, like I have to admit, I haven't been doing a lot, but I just started doing restaurant reviews again. I'm getting a fair amount of interest.
Let me rephrase it, Cindy. Instead of saying the survival of the website, let me say the animation of the website.
Okay.
I had a conversation with Andrea about how to make it more dynamic, how to make it more newsy. And she said, one of the solutions is to change the form. Well, first of all, do we want to talk about this or resident or mutual misperceptions? Let's be clear. What's at the top of our?
I'm more concerned about mutual misperceptions, frankly, but
Okay,
Well,
I'm fine.
in terms of a time situation, at some point, some time ago, Paul and I were given or volunteered, one of the two, for the assignment of meeting with Beth to discuss this topic.
Mm-hmm.
And
The ice, anyway,
what?
to break the ice, to begin it.
Right, but Beth was, you know, at CommComm when that was decided.
Yes.
And
But-
you're talking about misperception.
Misperceptions, right?
Okay.
And the two times we set meetings, she had to cancel them. And so we haven't set another one yet. And I feel like, you know, since we set that structure, there's been quite a large increase in misperception issues. So I'm feeling like if we are still the ones to meet with Beth, that I would be more comfortable having some direction on what we should talk about. Instead of, we were just back in the good old days there, we were just going to, you know, just generally listen to each other about things that I don't even remember now because there's been so many other things. So if you want us to still move ahead with that conversation or not, we can change that. I'm sure Beth wouldn't be unhappy with that. So maybe it's how we go forward and what the concerns are and what we think we need to do.
Let's start with concerns and taking the temperature and assessing the issue.
Okay.
You know, I apologize, but I can't remember any anecdotes we talked about. So if you could just refresh my memory about a misperception, a big one. I would appreciate it.
Paul,
Don't know.
did you have notes on that? Didn't you take some notes and that we were going to take into the meeting?
Yes.
That might help so you know where the original, where it started originally, if you can lay your hands on our notes.
Well, maybe we can just see what comes off the top of our heads. I mean, there's the marketing thing. There's,
Well, one of the earlier ones was simply staffing, the persistent staffing shortages, which, first of all, administration denies, but we all think we perceive. So what's going on there, and if there are shortages, why? And staff says, oh, well, it's because of the dynamic labor market, and resident perceptions are, oh no, they're saving money because there are fiscal problems and that sort of thing.
I think,
Last time Susan brought up the Willamette View path and the path as a miscommunication, misperception.
I think that talking about staffing or lack thereof is a non-starter and won't really get at significant concerns because it has to do with, in terms of hiring and firing, labor issues,
Which are confidential.
which are confidential. So what are the other things that are alive in our minds?
Well, I had one I was thinking about working on about resident concerns and perceptions about what's available in terms of healthcare here on campus. Like, you know, there used to be a toenail clinic. What happened to that? Who do you call if you have an emergency? What if you want to go to Madrona Grove? That whole deal about you get 5 days and what if it's full? There's been a lot of concern about that. So I was thinking one thing that makes it relate to communications is that maybe there could be a clearly written explanation, short to the point, that could be distributed to residents covering those topics. And Steve told me about Mike Monk had put something like that on the website. Another good thing from the website. What?
Mayo's.
Susan and Mary Helen are working on Mike Monk's.
Yes, I was just going to say. So I just found out that they're working on that. So I still think it might be a good thing once they get that for us to think about, you know, do we want to help make it into an accessible document? Do we want to talk to admin about it? I think that's the kind of thing.
I think we should distinguish between issues. When we first talked about mutual misperceptions, we were talking about staff-resident relationships, not about provision of various services or provision of information.
Okay.
We were talking about mistrust of staff and staff attitudes towards residents. So if that's not something of concern that we want to talk about, we'll move on.
Well, the Let's Talk process is, of course, the process that raised, concerns.
Mhm.
And we have pretty good documentation of what the concerns are. And in the survey, we have actually a pretty good quantification of them. But yeah, each of them is almost a topic unto itself that takes a little digging into to really understand what's really at issue. But boy, I mean, we know what people are concerned about, at least.
Well, the other thing is that they get, some of these things get explained and people either don't understand or don't hear, or not enough of them do. Erin Cornell spent more than a half an hour discussing healthcare services at the forum. And I mean, she was really digging deep and trying to answer as many questions as she could. And there wasn't enough time. There's too many questions, but I think it comes from misunderstanding a lot of the designs of the available healthcare system and the designs of where Madrona Grove is now with the different floors and what insurance covers and what it doesn't cover. That sort of thing is more easily, well, not easily, but solved by something in writing where people can read it and digest it and then maybe ask questions about it. But-
That's what I'm thinking too.
And Jerry, this is about an issue that for information. Originally, I thought we were talking about mistrust of certain administrators and the way in which certain administrators relate to residents. And with a mutual misunderstanding, mutual lack of respect. So I'm not going to beat a dead horse if this is not something that you think the committee should look at. But that's what I thought we were talking about.
If that is what we're talking about, that's going to be awfully difficult to approach. Not to say that we can't, but
And, you know, to me, it makes more sense to look at issues rather than personalities. And by working through the issues, you get at the personalities in a indirect way, I think. But maybe a better way than trying to directly confront the personalities.
Well, I don't think this was about personalities at all. At least my idea was that because of perhaps poor communication or incomplete communication of one sort or another, some of this mistrust, mutual mistrust, has grown up, and the idea was that the communications committee, once there was a better understanding of the kind of the way the mistrust works, perhaps the communications committee could find ways to make things more accessible or more transparent or presented in such a way that the mistrust was reduced.
So that goes back to finding issues that people don't understand and trying to clarify them with the help of the administration, like this
Well, it's
medical
not,
thing.
I think what Paul and I've been thinking of is to talk about how either side can communicate in more effectively on any subject. Things that what kind of communication builds trust and what kind of communication builds mistrust. And for us to hear from Beth's thoughts on what residents do that in their communication that causes administration to feel mistrustful or uncomfortable, and the same thing from the residents, what would help in ways of communicating on any subject. And while that sounds vague, it also could be very concrete. I don't think it's going to get anywhere. This problem.
Well, for example, one thing that you frequently hear from staff is, well, we've said this 1,000 times and people forget or they don't understand, so we'll say it again because they're old. It's like there's a certain amount of discounting of our reality, whether we're befuddled or whether we're just being blown off.
Yeah, that's a good example.
And a staff concern, of course, also is all this gossip that goes on RV chat and blows things up, and they get frustrated because they think it would be better to talk to them. On the other hand, communication on their side, is so often vague, non-committal, and not very satisfactory. Gee, we'll address that when phase 3 is over, kinds of things. So yeah, I mean, there are issues on both sides, but boy, they're tough things. Tough things to tackle.
Yeah, I wonder if Leading Age has any kind of courses available for communicating with residents. You know, Kirsten, who's on the board, is works for Leading Age. And I mean, that might be something that would be a good resource for administration.
What if the resident council recommended a consultant to do some resident administration communication facilitation events? Susan,
Well,
you've had a lot of experience with communication programs. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, my first question was, who are you going to get that can pull that off?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, as Steve was talking, I just had this vision of one of those typical role-playing exercises where people reverse roles and we pretend to be the staff and they pretend to be a resident, and they accentuate, you know, the stereotypical portrayals, and people can kind of say, oh, okay, that's how it looks, that's how it feels, that's, yeah. But it takes a very strong facilitator to,
Mhm.
Judy, you belong to an association of some kind for residents of CCRCs. Do they have any courses or training programs or anything?
I don't know. Steve's, well, it's NACRA, it's the national thing. We get newsletters. I haven't seen anything like that.
I
But
haven't seen much in the way of training courses on their website. They sometimes do an occasional webinar, but not much very consistently. And actually, I don't recall seeing anything about communication.
if we're going to get a consultant to come in here, probably over multiple sessions, it's going to be big bucks, and somebody's going to have to pay for that. So
What
we
if
ought
we
to think about it.
what if we went to the board and
We're having trouble defining this, which is part of the struggle of how do you stage an intervention when you're not quite clear on what is happening, what is your focus, what are you trying to achieve, how would it be different tomorrow if you woke up and everything along this dimension had been fixed?
It is hard to define. I mean, I'll tell you, anecdotal example. If you remember Alex, right, he used to be here. What was refreshing about Alex, aside from the fact that he got things done, was that he communicated really directly, right? You got the feeling he wasn't trying to hide stuff. You got the feeling he told it to you like it was, whether it was good or bad. And frankly, that's different, and that's hard to define, but it's just a different feeling than I get very often when I listen to Vassar and Tina. It is hard to define. That's part of the challenge, I think. And frankly, it's probably hard to train. It's probably hard to facilitate. It's just a hard thing.
Jerry, I think that what the chair of the resident council is hearing is that the communications committee perceives a sticky problem. So where do we go from here? That's not specifically addressed to you, Jerry. I'm just wondering.
I'm wondering if we can't ease into this with, here's one random idea, a session on how to give and receive feedback, to talk about an interpersonal communication skill that we could all improve. And I wonder if a lot of these things wouldn't surface in how we treat each other, how we interact. I don't know. Is
How
it-
would that be structured? Would we need an outside facilitator?
Probably, but that's a pretty easy topic. I mean, a
Pretty
lot of
focused
professionals
thing. Yeah.
would be, you could probably find facilitators who would cover that kind of thing.
For
With an
not quite as
understanding
much
that
money.
it will surface other issues. I mean, because, a lowly resident giving feedback to a senior administrator, there's, level differences, how you, I mean, I would think that some staff would really appreciate it if some residents gave feedback in a more caring way. I mean, some of the stuff we hear on RV chat is woo. And it can't be fun for staff to get a lot of abrasive interactions.
At this, it's almost 4 o'clock. What if we, each of us write something up, or if you're inspired, write something up about how you understand the problem and what some solutions might be when we bring it back to our next conversation. And feel free to circulate it amongst ourselves.
Can you send us an email to get us started,
Yes.
please? Thank you.
How does that sound to the rest of you?
Yeah.
Another
Homework.
interesting topic for me would be the generations and how in different tiers of ages, we have very different interaction styles. And a lot of our staff are younger. And I know, like, seniors in their 90s, you never ask for help. It's rude. And you're like, what? Of course you ask. Or whatever. I mean, there's got to be lots of material on generational differences. And here we are, we think it's, we're all seniors. We're from our 60s to our hundreds. That's a 40-year span. And,
Yeah,
we know we have a lot to offer and a lot of value because we've been around so darn long.
As we're doing this as homework, it occurs to me, I want to touch back to Cindy's talking about issues. Another way to get at this is to think about and list the issues that are of concern, not with the idea of solving them, but how communication around those issues is part of the problem.
So
Or
sort of
maybe
extract the themes that way.
Yeah, to get, there's 10 issues that people are very concerned about. And how do we communicate better about those so that we're not having, misperceptions on both sides when we have things that concern us. And there's where, you can talk about a lot of staff being let go as an issue. Is there any way that we can deal with the concerns, communicate better so that people aren't left concerned? And I realize that there's a standard answer that can be given, but if they dig deeper, they might find some better way of saying it. And what was the one that Cindy, you were talking about? We're talking about a committee and how you could work on it and have a solution. If you just stay at issues and then see how communication has impacted the negativity on both sides.
Well, okay, and I just have to say, recently, I had some interactions with another resident that were extremely abrasive, amazingly so. And I just shudder to think if this person treats staff that way, so there may be people here who are perfectly nice to other residents, but really, really abrasive with the staff. I don't know if there's any way to get at that, but it just occurs to me that it might be something that needs to be dealt with as well.
Well, all of these things will emerge in these drafts, which you can eventually send to me. And I'll see what we come up with.
Yeah, that was part of the idea of our going to Beth too, that she would then take this to staff and ask them what things contribute to their, their negative feelings or their misconceptions, which would address, if there's staff who have had numerous abrasive experiences with residents, it would come out that it was intended to come out that way, so that she was going to be the access.
Yeah.
To that.
I'm just thinking that we as fellow residents may have no concept of what some of our other residents do when they're communicating with staff. The person I'm thinking of, I never would have dreamed was capable of the level of abrasiveness that she ended up just exhibiting,
I understand that you've recently had an experience, but I think these concerns predate that.
Oh, no, absolutely. I'm just saying, there may be more of a problem than we in our normal interactions with each other and the staff realize. And I think it's a really good idea to try to find out the staff's perceptions. That's all I'm saying.
You know,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, just the fact that we're on this committee together means that we're part of a subset of people who can control our emotions in order to do effective communication with each other.
You hope.
Sometimes.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we fix it if it doesn't work. We've learned how to be civilized with each other. There are other people who I suspect, even when they were younger, had problems with interpersonal communications. And as people age, they lose some of the filters so that things just come out rather than being thought about before they come out. And I'm not saying that's the reason for all this, but I think, if we all look in the mirror, nobody's faultless here. Everybody's got some fault, some problem. And I think to try to generalize this is going to be real difficult. I think it's worthwhile to talk to Beth and try to get some examples. But, I think if we each come up with 9 different solutions for a problem, I wouldn't be surprised if they're all different, because he's just so individual.
I do think too that there are patterns. And that's hopefully what we'll be able to lift up. I mean, we can all name a bunch of abrasive people.
Well, there are always going to be abrasive people.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that in a way, it's more a question of atmosphere. Abrasive people can be the source of rumors and ill feeling. And if there's an atmosphere of mistrust, that sort of thing can grow. But if there's an atmosphere of collaboration and trust, and basically people are good guys, that the abrasive incidents are going to be much less toxic.
I challenge you to get that done with the continued presence of RV chat.
Well, okay.
Because these people attract each other, and they magnify any problem, and it started as small and becomes huge very quickly.
So our job is to distinguish between the wild hairs and the patterns that persist. So I will try to come up with some sort of framework that asks us to distinguish between those.
Well, maybe just giving people some guidelines on how to behave. It sounds elementary, but it might be helpful.
And the challenge is that, especially with management, some of it does come down to individuals. I mean, Karen and I spent an hour and a quarter with Tina on Friday. at her request, because she was concerned about our concerns and concerned about concerns other people had about our concerns. You
About
can toss
cats?
it- No, no, much broader than that, I think.
Oh,
But I don't know, because after an hour and a quarter walking out, I still don't know. I tried to ask several times. I still don't know exactly what the feedback was. Now, is that a frustrating communication? Boy, let me tell
Wow.
you, you
Yeah,
get hauled into the principal's office and you don't know why. I have such an abrasive personality that I guess
It's
people like-
oh,
also,
yeah.
So,
just tone it down, Steve.
so Tina was saying that there were residents who had reported their concerns about you to her.
in a very obscure way. But again, so again, it is, some of this is individuals. I mean, Tina obviously is a very visible, a very big part of the management team. And when you have a communication approach like that, that's a real problem. I have to go back in and try again. Because I
it's
really do want to
also-
get her to say, but I mean,
also a really inappropriate abuse of power.
Yeah,
it could be.
Marilyn, explain.
Steve was called into the principal's office. And
But he wasn't told the charges. He wasn't told what the,
Mhm. Just warned, Tony.
And I didn't want to bring that up as just a case study to dissect. It's just, I guess my point is that there are individuals that can be an issue too, of individual communication styles. Very often Tina talks and it's hard to figure out what she just said, right? And
Right.
that's frustrating. Now, how do you have a discussion with Tina about that? I'm not sure, but I'm actually going to try next time, because it was very frustrating to not be able to get real feedback.
Lots of luck.
So I don't know. And again, she's obviously a big part of the communication challenge that we all have. So I bring it up just as a point that, yes, sometimes it is individuals.
Oh, I just want to say, as a former principal, that it never works to call a leader in a community into your office
Mhm.
and not document the reasons for why you're saying everything you're saying, and to generally sort of slap their hands never works. And what it does is it increases the atmosphere in the community that leader, it was Tina in this case, it increases exponentially distrust and animosity and negative attitude that leads people then to be less charitable with each other.
But, once again, how could Tina have known what you were thinking if somebody wasn't reporting to her what was being said in RV chat? They say they don't read RV chat. They don't look at it. So somebody's telling her something.
No, I tried in this particular case. Frankly, I think the issue was cats. And I sent her exactly the same communication that I put in RV chat. So, but she wouldn't go there. She wouldn't. So no, I'm not sure that was the issue here, Jerry.
Well,
but-
okay, but Erin touched on cats and she wasn't real direct either. But that's because she didn't, I don't think administration has made a decision. But I'm just talking about one thing.
Jerry, that's incorrect. Tina made it very clear that decision has been made
what?
decision?
about cats.
Decision.
However, now that
What's the
they've been-
decision?
now to have them, but now that they have been surprised at the reaction that there are people that are concerned, they're reconsidering the decision. She made
Well,
that distinction.
yeah,
The decision had been made, but now they will maybe go back and reconsider it. So it's a funny way to put it, but yes.
well, people make a decision. They think they've made it based on all the known facts, and it turns out then that they find out they didn't know all the facts.
Yep.
Well, the pattern that's distressing is getting so far into a project or a plan before there's any input from residents. And then it's just delivered as a done deal. And then it is hard to backtrack.
We
But
are the customer. They're not
to-
asking the customer.
I'm a little concerned about bylaws that we're delivering a finished product and we're repeating that pattern of, is there a point for any input still to influence it, or is it done? I'm a little
So-
concerned about that.
That's what these education things Steve is talking about are really for, I think, to give
But
people.
is
a
that to
chance
lobby
react.
people to accept your final version? Or to
No,
say,
to give
No,
people a
do you
chance
think you
to
might
comment,
change?
react.
No, it's
Okay,
an
I'm
option to
gonna-
ask questions and
Okay.
make suggestions.
Okay,
It's a 4:15.
Okay.
The bylaws have not been finalized. They will be back in front of us at some point in the near future. And I think then we talk about the process.
I think part of the confusion was the final version. But you're saying it's not the final version.
It's a
No,
draft.
that was a shortcut way of trying to make a discrimination between an earlier and a later.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
See you in a couple of weeks.
Okay,
I
bye.
think,
Your trip home.
thanks,
Bye.
Yeah, get here safely. We need you.
thanks.